All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the speaker program with Bronx River Sound Shore Audubon Society. My name is Leslie Brill. I'm the chapter president, and we are very glad to have with us here tonight David Abreu, clean water advocacy specialist with Save the Sound, and to talk about grading the urban sea. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about David. David Abreu's advocacy work centers around communities with long-standing water pollution problems with a focus on designated environmental justice communities. Through his grading work on the Long Island Sound Report Card and Beach Report, and in working alongside Save the Sound's water quality team and Unified Water Study partners, David strives to put data to action that will tackle pollution with an eye toward long-term solutions. David is from the Bronx, New York, where he has experienced the environmental injustices that have impacted so many communities around New York City. While he holds a degree in computer science and cybersecurity from Iona University, David decided to pivot to a career in environmental science to help push for the solutions and strategies that will prepare communities like his to deal with the effects of climate change. So super important work. We all care very much about this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to David.
Thank you, Leslie, for the great introduction, and good evening, everyone. Let me go ahead and get my presentation on the screen here. Give me a moment. And I'll put this in presentation mode. Okay. I've lost the chat, so if at any point there's any issues with the screen share, please just someone unmute and let me know. So yes, good evening again. My name is David Abreu. As Leslie introduced, I'm the Clean Water Advocacy Specialist at Save the Sound. And I'm really happy to be here with you all tonight. Unfortunately, David Ansel, our Vice President of Water Protection, couldn't be here tonight, but nonetheless, we have another David to walk you through this program, another David A at that. So let's jump right into it. Just to briefly introduce Save the Sound, Save the Sound leads environmental action in the Long Island Sound region. We fight climate change, save endangered lands, and protect the Sound and its rivers, and work with nature to restore ecosystems. We have a really expansive toolkit that allows us to accomplish this mission. Our staff includes scientists, engineers, lawyers, and other advocates that all work together to realize this mission of protecting and preserving the Long Island Sound. And so it's really critical work that we're performing throughout the entire region. And just as an overview for today's discussion, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of Long Island Sound and how we are where we are today, what we refer to as the urban sea. We'll go through the Clean Water Act and the reports that Save the Sound publishes to help attain the goals of making our waters swimmable and fishable. And then lastly, we'll go through how we use that data to, again, accomplish that goal and the method of data to understanding to action that we use to disseminate our water quality data. So first up in our program, we'll talk about the urban sea, the Long Island Sound, as an estuary that is situated in the midst of very heavy development and human populations throughout its history. So I'll pause on this slide just to walk us through that. And it really starts in the pre-colonial times with the indigenous peoples that, made this land home. They foraged off the lands, they made use of the natural resources that were available to them. And they really were in great numbers throughout the entire region, upwards of 10,000 and 15,000. So they were really the first, humans that made use of this natural resource. Then we approach more colonial times. In 1614, the Dutch explorer Adrian Block was the first European to sail the Long Island Sound, and his final expedition really marked the beginning of trade and commerce to the Europeans that would come from, Europe. And the settlers would really, push out the Native Americans and, also use the natural resources in a way that wasn't really seen before. And these settlements began to grow. And over the years, we've reached the Industrial Revolution, where manufacturing and commerce are really booming throughout the entire Long Island Sound region. And it actually becomes known for that, right? We have many ports throughout the Long Island Sound, a lot of areas for ships to come and go. Um, that leads us to the 1950s. So throughout the entire industrial period, this area is used for manufacturing. But when we get to the 1950s and the post-war period, that manufacturing history sort of died down, and we enter a period of a post-war boom, a human population boom, but also a housing and development boom all throughout the coastline. At this point, the first comprehensive study was done throughout the Long Island Sound region to really inform the fact that humans were having an impact on the oxygen levels due to the excess nitrogen entering the sound from our wastewater. So throughout the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, we enter periods of real hypoxic conditions, low oxygen conditions that made the Long Island Sound, for the most part, a dead zone. There were many pockets where fish were suffocating. Lobsters were crawling onto shore to try and escape. Fish were gasping for air. And it really was a bad situation throughout the Sound. But what happened in the 1970s, particularly 1972, was that the nation finally had enough of our waterways being dumping grounds. Rivers were literally lighting on fire in parts of the nation, and the Long Island Sound was also, being polluted in exacerbating rates. So in 1972, the Clean Water Act was finally passed, which really allowed municipalities, the government, to go out and address this problem. So that that investment, that focus to the nitrogen problem continued throughout the 80s, 90s, and we really were able to put the Long Island Sound on a sort of nitrogen diet that really propelled it to the levels of recovery that we've seen today. And so nowadays, we have people that are able to safely recreate in the Long Island Sound. This is a photo from Queens. This is the most western portion of the Sound. This is in New York City. As we continue to move east, this is in front of New Rochelle. We have folks making use of the Sound, and then the further east you get, this is Stonington. You can see still the use that people have for the Long Island Sounds, and something that's also interesting to note, in particular, is development. As we moved east, you can kind of see the human settlements have sort of how can I say, they've decreased in population, if you will. There's a lot more natural resources towards the east, and you don't really have the amount of development you see in the west. So that's a important dynamic as we consider the grades that we'll be talking about. Excuse me. Um, And so now as we look at the watershed as a whole, it's a 3.3 million acre watershed. It stretches between two countries. As you can see, it reaches the top of Canada there. Two EPA regions, 6 states, two coastal boundary states, New York and Connecticut, and excess of 9 million people. It definitely is a lot more than 9 million people. In fact, within the 50 miles of the coast, there's upwards of 23 million people. So that really puts us in a sort of predicament when we're talking about the challenges that we're facing. And in particular, those challenges are directly correlated to nitrogen. These water quality stressors that stem from our wastewater treatment plants, stormwater runoff, fertilizer use, and our septic tank systems. So these all are vectors for stormwater and wastewater that's polluting the Sound with excessive nitrogen. Stormwater in particular picks up all of the pollutants from the ground, whether it be car oils and grease, pet waste, and it just dumps it into our drainage systems, making its way out to the Sound. During periods of high rain in certain cities, that stormwater mixes with the wastewater system, causing what's called combined sewer overflows that dump partially treated or oftentimes raw sewage directly into our waterways. And a lot of our cities on the coast are dealing with that right now. And so when we consider those stressors, it really goes contradictory to the Clean Water Act. The goal that states that wherever attainable, water quality should provide for the protection and propagation of fish, shellfish, and wildlife, and recreation in and on the water. This is what we refer to as the goal of making water swimmable and fishable, and really what drives Save the Sound's work and our mission, and the work of agencies throughout all of these cities and the various organizations that collect water quality data and have been working on this for decades. And of course, we all want our waters to be safe and swimmable because we love to make use of our natural resource that is the Long Island Sound. This is at Glen Island Park, and it's a shame when our beaches have to close because of the issue of bacteria contamination or some type of algal bloom or some issue caused by these stressors that we're just seeing throughout our estuary. But we're not the only ones that rely on the sound. Wildlife also is very happy with the changes that have come throughout the years. Whales have been spotted in the sound, particularly around Connecticut, but even making their way down to the North Shore of Long Island. We've had dolphin that have also made their way through the sound. In fact, I believe a pod of about 60 dolphin made their way through New Rochelle and up through Connecticut just last summer. So that was a really exciting sight for us. Just another photo of whales here, and you can see the whale eating, or lunging for menhaden bunker, a critical food source for whales. And during that time period that I mentioned, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, these fish were those fish that were gasping for air. So to see their schools, returning, and I've been out in the field and seen the swirls of the school of bunker. It's just really inspiring to see, and a great result in having our wildlife return. Um, and so let's sort of jump into the reports that Save the Sound issues that really drive our water quality work, and what allow us to get that data out to the public, and show the results that are happening. This is the first of our reports. This is the Long Island Sound report card. It's important to note that each report card is based off the data from the year prior. That's because we've just collected that data, and we're still working on the next year, of course. And so this data is collected through the Unified Water Study, which is an EPA framework that Save the Sound administers, to collect the water quality throughout the open waters, water quality data throughout the open waters and the bays and harbors that dot the Long Island Sound. Historically, there's been really good open water data collected by, as you can see, the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and the New York City Department of Environmental Protection and the Interstate Environmental Commission, that have really been the backbone of this study. And throughout the years, we've been able to bring new partners into the fold that have allowed us to address the gaps, as we like to say. And those gaps are the bays and harbors, again, that dot the regions outside of the open waters. We're actually entering the 10th year of the Unified Water Study this year, and our latest report card will come out this September, so you can look forward to that. We now reach 52 embayments, and we have 30 groups that participate. So we've really grown throughout the years, and it's really allowed us to reach different bays and harbors that we just couldn't in the past. And what this study has also been able to do, it's been able to streamline all of the data that's been collected over the years. Historically, data was collected in different ways, different times, and now we're all working to the same tune and moving in the same direction. So even that is really critical to progressing this work. And so what do we look for when we're out on the boat? I've been out on the boat myself. I actually started as the environmental technician. So, we had many early mornings, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. out on the Sound, testing the water. And what we were looking for were these parameters here. Your dissolved organic carbon, particularly in the open waters. As you can see, the little purple box, your dissolved organic carbon, your chlorophyll, dissolved oxygen, and water clarity. But then in the bays, we also look for your seaweed health and your oxygen saturation. And that sort of all gets graded in one big grading system that we have. And that's how the grades are created. And as you can see, this is what our report card looks like with all of the bays and harbors dotted throughout. Some of them have grades. We've made it really easy. Obviously red means bad and the bright green is really good. But you can sort of see that dynamic that I was talking about, right? The western portion of the sound really sees a lot more development that really causes those water quality stressors to be exacerbated, and you can see the result here. Um, that little western portion, that's the what we call the western narrows of the Long Island Sound. That includes New York City. Westchester, the Sound Shore is within the Eastern Narrows, which is right next to it. And so you can see again how our report card is presented and the type of data that you can find. I did want to present also a historical look at this map. So keep this in your mind. And as I click to the next slide, you can see how far we've come. Now this western sort of middle portion, or rather eastern portion, you would consider it, is a bright green. The eastern narrows have bounced back into the greens as well. But unfortunately, the western narrows remain, in a red state. However, even that F grade that it receives now is much better than the F grade it received in the past. So their trend is improving. And for us here on the Sound Shore, certainly our water quality has improved as well. Okay, so that was the Long Island Sound report card. You can consider that as taking a look at the ecological health of the Long Island Sound. And so our second report, the Long Island Sound Beach report, can be considered as grading the sounds for human health. And what this report card does is it provides grades on all the public and private beaches throughout the Long Island Sound. And it grades it based off of rainfall and the bacteria sampling done by local health departments throughout the Sound. So this is our other biennial report. That's also our reports are biennial. So this next report will be released next year, and so forth. So again, what goes into the grading, right? I mentioned bacteria sampling, I mentioned rainfall, but in particular bacteria, what's being tested is Enterococcus bacteria in marine waters, and E. coli in fresh waters. And so you can see what causes a sample to fail is when a sample exceeds 104 MPNs per 100 milliliters. And what MPN is, it's the most probable number. It's essentially the estimate of bacteria, viable bacteria that exists within a 100 milliliter sample. And then similarly for E. coli, that parameter is a little higher. But pretty much what we're looking for is how much bacteria is in a given sample. And again, with rainfall in particular, we're looking to see how did that sample fare in wet versus dry weather. And this is particularly important right now as we consider the effects of climate change. Climate change is exacerbating rainfall events, making our storms more severe in a short period of time. So that wet weather we're seeing increase as the years go on. Although we've had periods of drought, the trend, or rather the the rainfall totals have increased somewhat throughout the years. Um, so with wet that's about a bit of a tongue twister. With wet weather, we're looking for weather that exceeds a quarter of an inch in 48 hours prior to our sample, and in dry weather, less than that. And so again, really important now as we consider climate change. But when we combine those two, we're able to present a grade on our beaches. And so you can see here the beaches listed in Westchester. The grades throughout the beach report are broken into different regions. We look at New York City, Connecticut, Long Island, and Westchester. And each beach report will present your 3 years. So you can get a good sense of how water quality has fared at your beach throughout the years. If you look into each box, you can see again that FD, FW, MD, and MW that represent that frequency that I was telling you about rainfall, and also the intensity in which that bacteria sample fails. So both really important parameters when we consider these grades. And you're even able to look at even further, deeper dive into the data, as we like to say, on our website, Sound Health Explorer. So this is the homepage. Sound Health Explorer, and both the data for the report card and the beach report live here. So, after this, you can feel free to jump in. It's an interactive map that allows you to look at a variety of different map layers. You can look at impervious surfaces. You can look at combined sewer outfalls. You can slide through the years using that little slider at the bottom there. This is actually a bit of a sneak peek. Our beach latest beach grades will be released May 19th, so next week. So you can see our 2025 there at the bottom. But this is what you'll see, and you can see all the beaches throughout the Long Island Sound. And if you click on a beach, in this case, we'll look at Glen Island Park, you get a deeper dive at that particular beach. In this case, in 2025, Glen Island Park did pretty good. It got a B plus, which is great. In the past, it's fluctuated between A's and B's, so that's a pretty good place to be in. And you can see here, you can look at the amount of samples that were taken, again, by the local health department, when that sample was taken, the magnitude and the frequency, and all of that data that we just talked about. You can download the data if you wish, and you're able to really kind of use it as a tool to, advocate for your beach, which is exactly what the report card is meant for. This report card has been mentioned by elected officials in support of increasing funding for Long Island Sound. Thankfully, we have pretty broad bipartisan support for Long Island Sound, and we're grateful that folks all throughout the region really understand just the vital resource that this estuary is, both for recreation, for economics, and for the natural beauty that it provides our region. And so federal agencies, our municipalities, our state agencies, city agencies are able to submit their data. We're able to work collaboratively between all three sectors of government, and really use all of that common data to progress a common cause, which is, again, protecting and preserving our treasured estuary. It also prompts really important and critical local discussions. This beach in particular, or two beaches in particular, are, as you can see here on the slide, it's a tale of two beaches in the same city. Um, you can already kind of get a feel for why these beaches might have different situations. You can see on the left, that sewer outfall that's right there protruding into the beach picks up the stormwater from the surrounding area and dumps it into the water there. And in fact, the rocky outcropping that's on the edge of that left-hand photo is the rocky outcropping in the back of the second photo on the right. And so while the right-hand photo also doesn't necessarily look that much different in terms of its surrounding area, it does perform differently. It has that drain to capture stormwater. And it doesn't allow that stormwater runoff to make its way to the water. And actually, these beaches do receive different grades, with that second beach performing slightly better than the first. So, our infrastructure really matters. And where your beaches are situated really matters. But the problems don't have to persist. And there are ways to address them. And that's, again, part of Save the Sound's mission. In regards to prompting local discussions, this is in Westchester specifically. You can see three harbors within the coastal watershed. The first being Mamaroneck Harbor. And I say the first, sorry, because this is the first harbor that we've monitored at Westchester. Larchmont Harbor and Milton Harbor are also being monitored now, and they'll actually be featured in our latest report card with their first ever grades. So we're looking forward to seeing what the data says there. But you can see here, excess nitrogen is going into many of our harbors here in Westchester. It's a really big problem. And you can see here, just Larchmont Harbor alone, the nitrogen loading is 78% from fertilizer. And again, remember at the top, we talked about how nitrogen is that leading water quality stressor. And fertilizer was one of those sources. And so this is this nitrogen model that was developed by a team of scientists and science advisors. And you can see just how fertilizer is impacting, or is the majority of the impact in Larchmont Harbor. But this allows us to, while the data isn't, the best thing to hear, it does allow us to know where the source is, so we can target it and we can improve water quality throughout our water bodies. And so what does that look like? What does taking that action look like? It includes things that we can do, like reducing water usage. It includes things like maintaining your sewers, right, on a municipal level, but also private if you have septic. Um, you can shrink your carbon footprint, eliminate or reduce your fertilizer use, right? Talking about fertilizer just now. And of course, planting native if you can is always encouraged. And I really want to emphasize on make your voice heard, because it really is, through the grassroots that we're able to really shape the decisions that are being made in regards to our water quality infrastructure. And we are the champions of the Long Island Sound, and so it's really important, to continue to advocate for the estuary. Um, Kind of rounding out the presentation here, just, if you'd like, we're really striving to raise 1 million voices for the region. And it's really critical that, we all are working in unison and making our voice heard together. So if you can volunteer, help us clean up some litter, you can monitor bacteria, you can do bacteria monitoring with us, all types of things like that. Sign up for our emails, please stay in touch, and stay informed. And you can do that by signing up if you can. So I believe with that, I'm ready to take questions and any comments. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, David. Can you all hear me? That was an awesome presentation. You are awesome, and this is such important work. Um, I don't see any questions in the chat. Let me just switch to gallery view. And I have a few questions, but first, does anyone have any questions for David? Our other David A? I meant to say that too.
If you believe it, we actually have 4 Davids on our staff.
That's funny. And if you do have a question, please take yourself off of mute. All right, well, I'm just going to ask my questions then. So as a resident of Mamaroneck, and when I moved here, the beach was closed for several years, and then it finally reopened. I'm always terrified of it being closed again because I love to swim there every summer and in Rye and so forth. You mentioned that this neck of the woods that keeps getting failing grades, that within the context of our F, it's actually gotten a little bit better. Maybe it's an F plus. I don't know, is it if it's pass fail, but I'm wondering what direct actions have made the effect to raise that F a little bit. I know there's the Gunder boom there at the harbor, for instance, might have made a make or break difference in making that beach swimmable here in the Mamaroneck. But are there any particular things you can point to that have had a direct or the most direct effect on improving the local beaches in this area, Larchmont, Mamaroneck, Milton, and so forth?
Definitely. And I think investments in sewer infrastructure, drainage systems have been critical in that. In particular with Mamaroneck, I know there's a lot of work being done on the river, both as sort of like a flooding mitigation, but also to try and improve water quality. The beach does suffer quite often. It's hard to get around that. The wastewater treatment plant is right there. Stormwater, of course, is a big issue. And it all compounds itself. There's also, issues with the surrounding flooding when it gets to high tide with the beach. So I mean with the park in general. So there's been a lot of work, I think, to try and make the area more recreational friendly, and we're seeing that. But the fact of the matter is that with climate change and the amount of rainfall coming down, it's really hard to keep up. And the only way is to continue those big scale investments and expanding our wastewater capacity and expanding our drainage systems. And so continue to advocate for that is a big thing. There's always money and grant funding to apply for that municipalities can apply for. So always encouraging, your local environmental commission, to work with their local elected officials and apply for those grants and try to get that work done. And
Sure.
Mamaroneck has done a lot of great work in doing that so far.
Glad to hear. And that statistic about the fertilizer in Larchmont, 78%, that's staggering.
It is
Obviously, a lot of the same things that bird lovers do to try to keep their yards bird friendly, is are just as important for the water. But that
they
is
are.
staggering, and I wonder if there's any more that can be done. I know people want their fancy gardens. I think it's shifting a little bit, but something really needs to be.
Well, a lot of it in particular around Rye and Larchmont and and it's a lot of the golf courses that dot
Mm,
the
gotcha.
area. And so, I believe in Milton Harbor, which will also be getting a grade, there's a golf course right on the boundary. So, again, when rain falls, all of that, it washes into our waterways. All of that fertilizer, all of, pet waste and things like that. So really trying to limit fertilizer use, use a more sustainable fertilizer where you can, is really encouraged and even buffers between
Mm.
the golf courses and the water could be encouraged and something that um could capture the pollutants before they reach, maybe it wouldn't get everything, but it would get something and we need to start moving forward in that regard.
Oh, that's really interesting. The buffers for the golf courses, that seems like something that should be promoted.
It's the
Um,
same concept as the rain gardens
but yeah,
and things of that nature, capturing the pollutants before reaching the
sure,
waterways.
sure. I hope we can do more with that in the future, make every golf course do it. We have a question in the chat from Alice Prince.
Sure.
Can you say anything about the changes in bird populations in the Western Sound?
I'm not the best birder, so I can't specifically talk to the general populations of birds, but from my own experience, um, at least particularly in like closer to the Western Narrows, but in like that eastern western portion between Westchester, New York City, I've seen a lot of bald eagles out on the water, which has been encouraging. Bald eagle populations were really decimated throughout the years, and seeing them come back is great. I've been seeing osprey in great numbers. In fact, there's a nesting pair of osprey in the Rye marshlands that I love to see. And they're there actively. Um, we've been seeing a lot of wildlife return, and that's encouraging. So I hope that's, you know, a bit helpful.
Thank you. I think we've
I have
definitely
a
been
question.
seeing more bald eagles and osprey in recent years. Yeah.
David, actually, at marshlands, they have like three or four pairs
Oh
of
my gosh.
osprey.
That's I love that. The osprey is one of my favorite birds.
Who just said they have a question? Was it
I
Bird?
did. Well, actually, we kayak in the harbor and around the creeks, and we have seen osprey pairs too that are nesting. So that's exciting. And the other day around the dock, there were jellyfish, little jellyfish.
Oh,
And
wow.
I have 30 years of doing kayaking. I have never
Not
seen
seeing
jellyfish.
it.
So there were little jellyfish all around the dock. And I wondered if that was a good sign. Do you
Oh,
know?
interesting.
You know,
I've seen
I
them at the
think
beach in
it's
Rye, but I have not ever seen them around the
I
creek.
always
Yeah.
think it's encouraging whenever you can see them, any wildlife making its way back. Yeah, I don't think I've seen jellyfish myself, so that's pretty, I mean in that immediate area, so that's
Yeah.
actually really cool.
Neat.
That's amazing, Joan. That's really interesting. Wow.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
I've seen baby eel, but not jellyfish. Wow.
I've
what?
seen eel too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we live right by the harbor. So we've seen so many species of duck over
Wow.
the course of the winter. There were the mergansers, and there were, and I'm going to forget, everything's going to blank out, but there were at least a half a dozen pairs of different ducks, buffleheads, and beautiful birds, egrets, and um, great blue herons. So we've even seen green herons and triple color herons. So things are, pretty exciting sometimes. It's not that bad.
That's great. When you begin to see wildlife you've never seen there before and you've been there 20, 30 years, you know something
Yes.
is up. We have another question in the chat from
I
Alice
also,
Pernick.
sorry, Leslie, I also
Oh,
see
sure, sure.
Bernard. He's
Oh,
driving, so maybe we can catch him, not to jump anyone.
no, no, sure. I wasn't sure before, but I see your hand up, Bernie, now. I'm calling
Yeah,
on Bernie.
I have a question. Um, it's a where does the western and eastern boundary of the sound, like where does the sound turn into the East River, and where does the sound on the other end turn into the Atlantic Ocean?
Great question. So the East River sort of really opens up around the Throgs Neck Bridge, sort of City Island, Glen Island Park, that sort of region right there. The boundary between the Bronx and New Rochelle is sort of where it opens up to the eastern Narrows.
Okay. And then on the other side, the where does the sound turn into the Atlantic Ocean?
So at Rhode Island, you sort of have at the tip of Rhode Island, you have the race, you have I believe Block Island as well. So that's really where it starts to open up, right around that tip of Rhode Island, sort of.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And of
Adrian.
course you have the Plum Island out on past Long Island and out there as well.
Okay.
Wow. Great question, Bernie. Clear that up. By the way, are you familiar with a book called This Fine Piece of Water by Tom Anderson? I would recommend that book to people interested in the history of Long Island Sound. Excellent book.
I think a lot of our our
A
staff
lot of your
has
staff
gone through
is, yeah, I
that
know
book.
he was
Yeah.
with the organization. Maybe he even founded your organization. I forget.
They yeah.
Question from Alice Pernick. So we have two Alice P's also. That's the use of leaf blowers adjacent to the water also spreads a lot of airborne pesticides and fertilizers into the sound. Um, Great point, Alice. It's not just rain leaf blowers. I know they've been a bane to our environmental existence in some ways, and you don't think of them as spreading things into the water. So that's a very good point.
So that on a broader point, if I can, atmospheric deposition really is a thing as well, right? Like just naturally occurring and all of the nitrogen and stuff like that also make its way in through the
Mm.
atmosphere and from just not sources that you would normally think of. So um important to think about as well.
Interesting. Now that online tool you were demonstrating, what is it called? Sound Beach Explorer.
Sounds
Um,
Health
Sound
Explorer,
Health Explorer.
and I
Is
can
that
post the link in the chat actually.
sure? I was going to ask if that's live yet or if that's on Save the Sound's website.
Yes, so Save the Sound, this is our website as well. It's not our main website, but this is another one of our websites and it is live. You can go back, I believe the farthest data we have is about 2008, including the open waters of the sound. Different bays and harbors have started at different points, so depending on what you're looking at, you can adjust the slider accordingly.
And that sort of deep dive data into an individual beach, that's more data than has previously been available in one place on one beach, correct? I'm getting the impression.
Yes. So we've been able, local health departments again have collected this data, and they upload this data to an EPA database. And so what we do is we pull that data from that database and sort of make it a more digestible version. So it's existed in in the archives, if
Right.
you will. But yes, we've made it a lot easier to access that in one place through this app.
That's great. And you have a few beaches that are receiving their very first grades this year,
Ba-
Larchmont and
Bays and
Milton.
harbors, yes.
Wow.
So Milton Harbor and Larchmont Harbor will be receiving their first grades. Yep.
I presume the press is already aware of this. They're going to be jumping on that.
Yep. Well, next week we'll be releasing the grades and going around and talking about them.
Wow, wow. So you're out on the boat And you're there with what? Test tubes? Are you doing like sample, like analyzing stuff on the boat? Or are you just collecting samples and bringing it back? How does that work?
We do all of that. We go out on the boat early morning with a variety of different tools. Our most common tool is what's called a sonde. It's essentially a data probe that you enter into the water, and it gives you real-time data on a handheld device that we then, record all this data over the course of 6 months, from May to October. And yeah, all of that data goes into making the grades for each bay and harbor. Um, and then that's sort of one aspect, and I didn't get into this program that we have. It's more of a citizen science program, but it's our volunteer bacteria monitoring program. And with that, we actually go out to the rivers and streams and beaches, and we actually, go out and collect samples of bacteria, or rather samples of water that we then take to our lab. Our lab is actually located in Larchmont. It's a New York State certified water quality lab, and we process our samples in-house. And so it dramatically cuts down costs, and we're able to get that information out to the public a lot quicker, on our website, and really provide that broader picture of how bacteria pollution is throughout the areas that we test.
Very interesting. And if someone is interested in volunteering with that program or any of the other things you mentioned, cleaning up litter, is there a link on your website, people for volunteering? I presume there is, but
Yes, there definitely is. I'll find it and post it in the chat as we continue to wrap up here. But if anything, please, I'll also put my email in the chat, which is the most probably quickest way if anyone is interested to just reach out to me and let me know if that's all right.
that's great. Thank
And
you.
then, but of course, if you're browsing our website, we do have opportunities for volunteering and other events that we're hosting.
Great. No, it's great to have your direct contact for that. And one last question. Do you have youth volunteers or is it adults only?
Yeah, no, we totally work with different ages, youth volunteers, adults, of course. We have a lot of different programs that we can, if there's something for the summer that a student is interested in, interning, something of that nature, feel free to reach out to us, and we can figure something out. Or if they have a school project that, you need help researching, or guidance, we can't always be, we're not going to hold everyone's hand throughout the
Yes,
entire thing,
yes.
but we can certainly lend our expertise and point them in the right direction.
Great. I
Um,
know. Oh, we have hang on, Bernie, 1 second. A question popped into the chat, and then you're next. Carolyn McLaughlin. Hi, Carolyn. Can you say a few more words about the involvement with local groups along the Bronx River and the Sound on water monitoring?
Totally. Yeah. Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, we work really closely with our partners throughout these different bays and harbors. Speaking of the Bronx River, the Bronx River Alliance is a big partner of ours. I'm actually a co-chair on one of their ecology teams. And so, yeah, they have been a great partner of ours throughout the years. And we really rely on our local partners to be out there sampling in the early mornings, and getting that data to us. Um, we work with East Basin LLC here in Westchester. David Spader, he's been collecting data for us for a long time. He's monitoring Mamaroneck Harbor, and he's also monitoring Larchmont and Milton Harbor. So yeah, we work really closely with, again, our local partners, and get this data out there.
David, are they doing stuff with the premium marsh as well?
Is that New Rochelle
No,
behind?
it's that actually it's in the city of New Rochelle, the town of Mamaroneck, and the village of Larchmont. It's behind the BLD diner.
That's exactly where I thought it was.
Mm.
We aren't now, if I'm not mistaken. I don't believe we monitor around there. No. Um, I know there's been a lot of discussion about that area back there throughout the years, though.
Yeah, because I know it's a town conservation area and it's a critical state and federal DEC tidal wetland, and they want to build an apartment building where the BLD is.
Yeah, I've definitely heard about that. And it's a hard conversation. It's something that we're seeing throughout the entire region. Right now, the state DEC is also looking at regulations regarding affordable housing and housing around wetlands and on wetlands. It's something that we've been involved in, trying to uh, push in a different direction. But yeah, it's something that we're seeing sound wide. A lot of development and housing around the remaining wetlands that, we have left.
Thank you. Bernie.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you partner with any organizations like doing, like you mentioned biodiversity with Bronx River Alliance, but is there any organization you work with where you do biodiversity counts like of all the different creatures and plants that are in and around the sound, including in the water? Like I remember back in college days, I went out on a class trip to the New England Aquarium. We went out on a boat and they had a net that went down and would bring things up so they could count the creatures at the bottom with a special net where they could count what creatures were in the net from down at the bottom of the water. And I don't know if there's any organization that's doing like studies on the counts of different creatures in the water and on the shores, like I guess like big days or but just not just birds but everything. I don't know if you work with any organizations that are doing extensive like counts just to kind of monitor what the health with the biodiversity of creatures in birds and animals, flora and fauna.
Yeah, great question. I think well, not that I think we unfortunately don't necessarily count ourselves. Although that would be really cool and something I would love to do. But a lot of our local partners and also the state DEC do wildlife counts. I know of at least the Rye Nature Center, and Rye does eel counting, and has done eel counting during, I believe, the winter months. State DEC also does eel counting at different locations. And if I'm not mistaken, they also do like fish seining where you can go out and I don't know if they count, but you can see what's at your coastal beach and see what fish you can bring up. So there are events like that happening. I would encourage you, yeah, check out the New York State DEC and
Okay.
the Rhine Nature Center if you're in this area.
And the what center?
The Rye
Well,
Nature Center.
oh, Ryan Nature Center. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I think they do
Okay. Well,
some
thank.
senning at Edith Reed Preserve as well. We need like a big senning day or something. I think that the New York State DEC has some really interesting mailing lists if you're not on them, like very subject specific mailing lists, and it sort of spans the whole state. But that's a cool thing to be on to learn about things like that.
Yep.
We have a question from Joan in the chat. Are there any pesticides for the yard to keep the tick and mosquito population down?
I'm actually not sure myself. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not quite sure right now. But what's kind of an interesting correlation, if I can, with that is that a lot of the animals that uh eat ticks and mosquitoes, things like skunks and other animals like that, when we encroach on their habitat and really start to eliminate them from their natural environment, that sort of allows ticks to sort of spread a little bit more uncontrolled. It allows for the ecosystem to get a little bit out of whack. And we're not seeing that on that scale in our immediate area, but it's just an interesting sort of thing to consider. It's sort of the same concept of why you don't see as many mosquitoes when you're driving on your windshield, right? Or as many bees and butterflies flying around as you would, right? As we remove the pollinator habitats and further develop, a lot of our wildlife is forced to get in smaller quarters, and we lose that diversity in ecosystems. So um, definitely not about pesticides, but just another sort of
Yeah,
interesting
well,
thing to
the
think about.
problem is I don't want to use pesticides. I'm
Yep.
not. But
Yep.
then I'm afraid of going in the yard.
Yep.
There's so many more mosquitoes. So it's hard for me to be out there
Mm.
because I'm getting, you know,
Yeah.
mosquitoes bites. I was trying to see if there was anything that could be considered, safe for wildlife,
Mhm.
but I don't know if that's possible.
No, I don't know right now, but I'll do a little research and I'll get back to you. See with our team.
That would be great.
I,
Yeah.
I have one last question, actually. You mentioned an excess production of seaweed as a negative effect,
Yeah.
overproduction of seaweed. Is there any way we can harvest some of that excess seaweed, or would it be safe to harvest to turn into a safer type of more natural fertilizer? Is that a possibility? How to make
Uh,
use of our seaweed?
Great question. I think, I need to get back to you on specifics, but I can recall a lot of effort being put into seaweeds being used as fertilizer. There's a lot of different kelp farming and things like that being done in the Sound. Um, Specifically, the issue that causes a lot of that seaweed to come up is related again to nitrogen. But what happens is that those nutrients that get into the water, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, they cause plant life to really broaden and expand and grow out of control. And so what happens is that a lot of that, when that plant life dies, the decomposition process eats up the oxygen, which really drives the oxygen down, and fish suffocate and can't breathe. I don't know necessarily if algal blooms in that sense can be harvested for fertilizer in that way, but there are certainly a lot of different programs and initiatives underway to make use of things like that, seaweeds like that.
What I'm
Um,
talking about, like I know mostly what we see here is rockweed and
yeah,
Irish rockweed, sea lettuce. What else do we find? Just lots and lots of rockweed mainly, which is
yeah.
edible. Um, well, if no one has any further questions, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you so much, David. That was a wonderful presentation. Really glad to meet you. Fantastic info. Thank you all for being here this evening. This program is being recorded and the recording will eventually be online. You'll be able to watch it, and as well as all of our other past programs that have been recorded in recent years on our website. And I encourage you all to attend any of the our chapter events that I mentioned before we officially started the program. Again, our website is brsaudubon.org. We have walks coming up the next 2 weekends at T-Town and Litchfield, Connecticut. We have our annual meeting and party on June 4th and Mount Vernon Bird Day on June 6th. Um, so hope to see some of you there, and thanks again. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Very informative, very interesting talk. Really
Indeed.
appreciate it.
Yes,
Thanks,
indeed.
Barry. Thank you.